What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 37th level of the PlayStation Drive, even though I just did the RPG Cave intro. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Turfin, and I'm joined, as always, by the man himself, Matt Sowinski. Matt, how are you doing on this lovely, lovely Thursday, good sir?
I'm doing all right, my friend. It is February. The onslaught is beginning, and my God, strap in because it's going to be one wonderful and chaotic ride. Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm doing well as well. You know, we're in Febtober, of course, you know, the greatest of all months where it's just, you know, review season, acquisition season at the same time, and apparently NFT season as well, because everyone just loves NFTs, as I say sarcastically. But of course, this is the PlayStation Drive where we talk about PlayStation all the time. Let's clean the garage a little bit. So folks at home, if you like what we do and you want to support the show, there's a number of awesome ways to do that. Number one, subscribe to us on your podcast feed of choice, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. We're on all the things. So check us out there. Of course, leave a rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well, because that helps the show go a long way. Also, if you want to see our beautiful faces every single week, head over to YouTube, youtube.com/YumiCapri. We put up a video version of the show every single Friday morning. And of course, like, subscribe, share, comment, all those things that people on YouTube tell you to do, including us, because, you know, we're on YouTube. And then last but not least, if you want early access to this and all of our shows, head over to Patreon at patreon.com/YumiCapri. Of course, throw a little tip in the old tip jar and out comes content. And then last thing I want to plug real quick, Matt, you were on this other show talking about PlayStation earlier this week. Tell me about that. How'd that go?
Yeah, so I was over on Xbox A, our friends of, Court and Matt Midwood, who run that channel. So I was there with Mr. K-Step from the Trophy Room, and we were talking all about PlayStation and Xbox and how all these acquisitions and the future of both and how, you know, they're going to be affecting each other and whether Call of Duty and Destiny are going to be exclusive or not. But we had a wonderful time. We spoke for just over an hour. So please go check that over on youtube.com/Xbox A, because we had a really, really good conversation. It was a lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah, I got to catch some of that live, and I mean, you definitely represented the PlayStation Drive well, Matt, on that show. So thanks for being our representative, and yeah, go check it out. Our friends over at Xbox Day, they're awesome. I mean, if you're not subscribed to their channel, even though this is a PlayStation show, they do some quality stuff over there. So go check them out. But anyways, let's grab our 8 tracks, pop them in. It's time for the playlist, and Matt, we've had so much to talk about as far as games we played on PlayStation this week. But tell me, what'd you play this week? Doesn't have to be PlayStation related. What'd you play?
Yeah, I've been losing myself in Pokemon Legends Arceus all week. The game is fantastic. I'm so happy with it. Me and Mr. Midas did like a review in progress, which is up over on the Burnout channel so far. But yeah, I'm really liking it. Otherwise, yeah, dude, I have been playing stuff, but I can't talk about it. Yay! Yep. And that's all I'm going to say. It's
definitely February because we're both in the same position. We're playing stuff we can't talk about, but I mean, you'll hear us talk about it sooner rather than later. So yeah, I apologize. Our lists are a bit small this week. Mine on the document is blank, but I will fill that in. So yesterday I talked about how I replayed the Dark Pictures anthology, House of Ben and Medan and Little Hope. I was playing those again because I was looking for like smaller bite-sized experiences to kind of like, you know, basically kind of get away from work for a bit or get away from some of the other games we're playing to kind of take a break from them to maybe play something like narrative driven that I know I can beat in a couple hours and just move along with my day. So I played those. Again, I talked about those on the Xbox Drive yesterday, so I won't talk about that again here. But I also played a game that's on Game Pass, but is also on PlayStation. It's been out on PlayStation for a couple of years now. But I'm finally getting around to playing this version of the game because it came to Game Pass. And that is Taiko Drum Master, which of course is a Japanese arcade game that got ported to, you know, PlayStation and Switch a few years ago. Finally came to Xbox this week. And of course, I love rhythm games and I used to play the drums. So I figured this was a perfect fit. Plus, I had actually played the arcade game in Japan. So I knew what I was getting to with this series. And of course, I just been having a ball playing this, just jumping into it for half an hour, you know, drumming out to some stuff. Unfortunately, the one thing that kind of kills the experience, though, is we don't have a drum peripheral for really any of the consoles. Because again, like if, for example, we had like a Taiko Drumpaster peripheral for PlayStation, like PlayStation 4 that I could get, I would get it and then buy that version on PlayStation just so I could have the arcade experience of playing that game, because the controls for that game are kind of bad as far as, you know, playing that game on a controller versus, you know, playing on, actual drums. It isn't the same. So, but at the same time, like it's the only game on Xbox where you'll get to, drum along to, songs from Evangelion or Bakemonogatari or, Naruto and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. Or just like Vocaloid stuff like from Hatsune Miku or a bunch of other artists and stuff. So yeah, I've been really enjoying my experience with it despite, the awful controls. And who knows, maybe I pick up the PlayStation version down the road, but I've been having a ton of fun with it. I just wish there was an actual peripheral for it.
Isn't there a peripheral for it on Switch?
I don't know.
Because I'm having flashbacks to like when I lived in Korea, because a friend of mine at the time was looking into buying the game on Switch because he had found a version with it that came with the actual drum peripheral. But maybe I'm having like some weird fever dream thing. But I feel like there might be a peripheral for Switch.
So it's possible that there might be, but it just probably didn't come out here. I think that's maybe what
possibly.
I'm looking at. So I'd have to like probably import it, assuming that they still make it at this point, right? So because again,
next time I go to Korea, I'll bring one back for you, buddy.
Oh, I have to look at because I haven't really seriously looked into it, or maybe maybe the plan is actually to buy because I know there's a PlayStation 2 version of Taiko Drum Master. So maybe I do that because there's probably PlayStation 2 peripherals still floating about because I'm more into playing PlayStation 2 games actually like recently anyways, as everyone is been able to tell from the last couple of shows. So yeah, who knows? Either way, that's Taiko Drum Master, but let's slam the brakes on this conversation. It's time for some breaking news. I like that transition there. I think I did a good job with that. So first off, biggest news story of the week, of course, that we have to start with. Bungie has been acquired by Sony for $3.6 billion. According to Jim Ryan, the studio will operate independently from PlayStation Studios and will self-publish all future titles. In fact, in kind of like the PlayStation blog post, it was worded as though Sony was acquiring Bungie and not the PlayStation division. So they're not actually going to become a part of PlayStation Studios in the same way that we saw with, Bluepoint or Housemarque. They're going to be kind of their own separate entity and they're going to do their own thing. So again, Destiny 2 is apparently going to stay on other platforms. And apparently the future for Bungie is going to be multi-platform. But Matt, what do you think about this news? Because I mean, this could be spun in a bunch of different ways, but what did you think about this news story?
I don't know. For me, this reeks of the same PR speak that we got when Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard. I mean, Jim Ryan also went on to say how like, they're going to prep, Destiny movies and Destiny TV shows, or, they're expanding into different kinds of media, which is part of the reason why I'm assuming that they bought it. They look at Destiny as not just a game, but as a whole franchise that they can make out of it. But I don't know, dude. I feel like while I do think Destiny 2 and, its current and possibly future expansions will continue to remain multi-platform, I don't know what the future is. And I really do feel like I'm sure there are plenty of conversations going on between Microsoft and Sony right now, talking about like, you let us keep Call of Duty, we'll let you keep Destiny. And like, I feel like, this could be a situation where if one of them decides to be like, no, never mind, Call of Duty 2025 is now exclusive on Xbox, and PlayStation will turn around and be like, well, Destiny 3 is going to be exclusive too. Like, I kind of feel like there is wiggle room for this to change in the future. I just don't think it'll be anytime soon. And again, does this mean that Bungie is now going to work on a new game for PlayStation and that might be exclusive? Like, there's a lot of verbiage here that's very carefully put together that for now, probably nothing will change, but the future, I don't know, dude. $3.6 billion is a lot of money to spend on something that you're not going to try and, cater. Is it going to be like, oh, on whatever Spartacus is, you're going to be able to play Destiny for free here, but you got to spend $80 on Xbox or whatever it's going to be. I think this is a very interesting acquisition given Bungie's history. And I don't know, dude, we're entering some interesting times here. Where are you at on this? What do you think?
So first off, just to kind of go to a point that you were talking about, we actually know that Bungie is working on another game that is not Destiny related because they did announce back in I think it was either 2 years ago or a year ago, that they're working with a game, working on a new IP with NetEase, kind of funding the game, but apparently that's been shifted, and it sounds like that's still in the works, but it's just one of those things where NetEase is not, working closely with Bungie on it anymore. So it's possible that maybe Sony is taking the reins on that, and that's where I think this acquisition starts to make more sense, because I imagine, the next new IP from Bungie, which it was supposed to come out was targeting, 2024, 2025 at this point, that's probably going to be PlayStation exclusive at this point. And when they say multi-platform in their, communication, multi-platform can still mean PlayStation and PC, but not Xbox or not Switch, right? So that's where I'm imagining this, where you could make an argument that they could make, Destiny 3, if there is ever a Destiny 3, be a multi-platform game, because they want to retain that same audience from Destiny 2 on Xbox. But no, I'm with you. They don't, obviously, again, we talk about this when we talked about, Activision Blizzard, you don't spend all this money to, keep it on your rivals' platforms, or at least not entertain the thought of making an exclusive. And obviously, and with, the player base now with Destiny 2, I think it's kind of stupid to kind of make that, discontinue that on Xbox, for example. If they discontinue Destiny 2 expansions on Xbox or something like that, I feel like that would not be such a good idea. But anything beyond Destiny 2 that Bungie does, I imagine you have to at least consider the idea that it'll be exclusive. So I would actually think about it in the way that I expect those games any games coming from Bungie from now into the future to be exclusive, unless they tell us otherwise at this point.
Right.
Plus, again, with the wiggle room you talked about too, I mean, what if there's a change in leadership at Sony down the road? What if Jim Ryan, for example, eventually steps down or retires and someone else takes over? And then, in 2026, 2027, for example, they decide, okay, they're going to be a Sony specific studio from then on, right? So they could always change course down the road. But I want to bring in the most famous of all FamousSeumases over on the Discord, who asked the question, so since Bungie isn't going to drop everything and make exclusives for PlayStation, why do you think Sony acquired Bungie in the first place? So Matt, what do you think about FamousSeumas' question about this?
So I think just up front, like I said, movie and TV series, other media. I mean, Sony has a publishing and, movie division. So this for me is a very easy sell in that respect, especially with, the Halo series around the corner. And we're seeing more and more video game adaptations being done somewhat right, or at least steps in the right direction. So I think them acquiring them also just to get the Bungie, okay for them to produce their own series makes sense. But I also think it's just their technical know-how. And, we had another story, which I'm sure we'll get to in a little bit, talking about all of the live service games that Sony is apparently working on. And I mean, Bungie at this point should be hopefully know what they're doing when it comes to live service and how to kind of run that properly. So I think it's not just even outside of, Destiny as a franchise. I also think they're looking to keep their expertise, because there was another story going around that they spent a certain amount of money on Bungie itself and then added money onto that to retain a bunch of the talent at Bungie, because they do want their help for first person shooting mechanics, for live service stuff. So I think it's a mixture of, they want to make Destiny into something other than games, but they also want Bungie's expertise to help them with other stuff that they're probably working on.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think this goes beyond, what Destiny is now, as far as, the future of, Bungie IPs combined with their expertise in live service games. Because it sounds like Sony wants to go in that direction. Again, we're going to talk about it in a little bit because we got a news story about it. But I think that's more of why this move made sense for Sony, because I think they really wanted a live service game under their belt. And they have one, and then they have a studio at their disposal that knows live service games. So if they want to make more live service games in the future, they know who to talk to, kind of thing. So I think that's why this move happened. And it sounds like this move's been in the work for a while, because, I mean, we've been hearing rumors about, Bungie wanting to be acquired for a long time now. In fact, they were in talks with Microsoft for a while, apparently. But it's just one of those things where I feel like the evaluation was too high for what Microsoft was expecting from them. Combined with the fact that ultimately, Microsoft's already a really good place with live service games anyways, as far as, what they're doing with Halo and some of their other games like Sea of Thieves and stuff like that. So I just don't think that they needed them as much as, Sony does in the same regard. So otherwise, this story could have been actually a little bit different, even with Microsoft maybe reacquiring them. But it's still weird to talk about Bungie being part of Sony now, because, I mean, the creators of Halo now belong to Sony. And it's just weird to say, as what we talked about it last week with, Activision owning, Crash Bandicoot, or Xbox owning Crash Bandicoot. It's just weird times we live in now, Matt. I can't believe that this is real life. But
strange times, my friend.
All right. Well, next news story. Obviously, it's the beginning of February, so it's time to talk about PlayStation Now games, as we do, of course, every month. So the following games have been announced for PlayStation Now, and they're actually out right now by the time you're listening to this. So Grand Theft Auto Vice City, the Definitive Edition, that'll be until May 2nd. So you've only got a couple months with that one, and then it leaves the service. And then you've got Little Big Workshop, not a sequel to Little Big Planet. It's just an indie game called Little Big Workshop, Through the Darkest of Times, and Death Squared. So those are all your games for PlayStation Now for the month. I will say this is definitely a weaker month for PlayStation Now. That's for sure. Don't get me wrong. I don't really know too much about about Little Big Workshop or Through the Darkest of Times anyways. I've heard a lot about Death Squared. I hear that game's actually pretty fun. And of course, Vice City. As much as I love Vice City, I mean, that game's been plagued with problems, ever since it came out. So, and they haven't really been fixed. So combined with the fact that by the time they get fixed, like the game will be leaving the service. So Matt, what do you think about this month's PlayStation Now offerings?
Yeah, Yeah. GTA Vice City again. Like we talked about this months ago when this was when we were talking about GTA 3 coming to PlayStation Now and San Andreas going to Game Pass, and we're kind of like, where's Vice City going to go? Well, now we see it's coming to PlayStation Now, but the state of that game, like you said, by the time it's actually running properly and is actually enjoyable again, it's probably going to be leaving soon. I've always heard good things about Death Squared. Through the Darkest of Times seems to be a historical resistance strategy game, sitting at like a 71 on Metacritic, and then Little Big Workshop is a factory tycoon game sitting at 77 on Metacritic. So they seem to be kind of your middle of the run games that some people enjoy if that thing is kind of for you. Neither one of them are for me. So for me, yeah, this is a bit of a weaker month.
Yeah, definitely, especially because I think last month was like a really good month for PlayStation Now, and I think this one just doesn't really do it for me. There's nothing on here that gets me wanting to, re-up my subscription to PlayStation Now, if that makes any sense. So there you go. All right, next up, Ghostwire Tokyo officially has a release date. It will launch exclusively on PlayStation 5 and PC on March 24th. This actually leaked out a while ago, but there's actually, we now have the confirmation now because they're doing like a Ghostwire Tokyo presentation later today. It's just one of those things where, it didn't happen before we recorded today. And the only reason we know the release date, because they didn't actually put it in the announcement post, was because it's in the description of the video on YouTube that they posted, where it's like, come back here to watch the premiere of, the Ghostwire Tokyo, showcase. Oh, by the way, here's already the release date. We've already listed it here for you. So there you go, March 24th. Another game in March of this year, Matt. Please be excited. What do you think about Ghostwire Tokyo coming out next month?
I'm so surprised that it's such a quick turnaround, and I'm very happy about it. I mean, PlayStation is going to be hitting pretty hard over the next couple months between, Horizon, Gran Turismo, and now Ghostwire Tokyo. So this makes me excited. I'm very curious to see more from it later today. I hope it's good, and I hope it's awesome. And this is, again, another one of those interesting situations of an Xbox-owned studio, releasing another exclusive on PlayStation. Yeah. So I'm sure this will be coming to Game Pass a year from now. But this is a game that I'm really tentatively, optimistically excited about. I really want to see more from it, and I'm excited that it's just around the corner.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about this one. I love Shinji Mikami and his studio, and I love horror games, and I love Tokyo. So, I mean, throw all those into one game, and I'm like, yeah, I'm interested. So, yeah, I'm excited to watch the showcase today, too, because it's a game that I wasn't like 100% on, sold on maybe buying day one or not, or just waiting for it, for a year to come to Game Pass. But I am excited to learn more about it. And it's just around the corner, which I'm actually surprised about too. Like I figured that game was maybe a fall game this year or something like that, but it sounds like it's right around the corner. But this also makes me a little bit sad too, because I think this will probably be maybe one of the last Bethesda games we see on PlayStation. Period. Like as far as new games are concerned, obviously we know the new expansion for Elder Scrolls Online that's coming out later this year is coming to PlayStation. But beyond that, like anything new from Bethesda, I don't know if we're going to see on the platform. So this might be our last Bethesda game on PlayStation, which kind of makes me a little bit sad. But we'll see.
We will.
All right. Next up, this is a big one as well. And this kind of alludes to some of the stuff we were talking about with Bungie as well. Sony actually had an earnings call that just happened last night where they basically talked about a whole bunch of different stuff as far as they do this usually every quarter as far as where the PlayStation 5 is in sales, as well as, a bunch of other things for investors to get them excited about the platform. So they announced 4 things that I wanted to highlight here. Number one, PlayStation 5 has sold 17 million units life to date at this point. It's actually officially passed the Wii U in lifetime sales. It's happened. It's official. It's outsold the Wii U. In addition, Sony CFO Hiroki Totoki stated that they plan on creating movies based off Bungie's properties, which you talked about in the Bungie story. Plus, they have multiple live service games in development, and they plan to have more than 10 live service games from PlayStation Studios by the end of 2025's fiscal year. So essentially, that ends in March of 2026, essentially. Additionally, Sony has lowered its number of PS5 projected sales down from 14 million to 11 million later this year to indicate further supply constraints with the console are happening. So, Matt, there's a whole bunch to unpack here. What do you think about some of the stuff we learned from Sony's earnings call?
So, 17 million units life to date is fantastic. It's obviously selling at a really good pace. I'm very curious as to what this number would be if we weren't hit with all the supply issues that have been plaguing them over the last little while, because I feel like that would have been a very different number. But I'm curious to see how it's going to continue to sell, because obviously it's going to, but also when these things are going to be much more readily available with Sony dropping their projections. This is pretty much a flare outgoing saying not anytime soon.
Yeah.
The Bungie stuff we've already talked about, but more than 10 live service games from PlayStation Studios by the end of the 2025 fiscal year. What are these games? Who was developing them? And when are we going to start to see this drop? Because that's a lot of games, a lot of live service games specifically, which I'm a little nervous about, because PlayStation hasn't really journeyed into that front yet, but obviously they're planning to. And live service games are incredibly difficult to nail down between progression, between, how much can they charge for what. This makes me, every time I hear live service, I get inherently already a little bit anxious and nervous, because look at what happened to Avengers, because it was because it had to be a live service game. I don't know, dude. I'm that part of the story makes me anxious, makes me nervous. I trust PlayStation enough that I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but just inherently live service games for me, I don't know. Where's it coming from? When are they going to start dropping? When are we going to learn more about them? Because that's a lot of games over the next few years that, again, if all of these hit, are you really going to be playing 10 live service games over the course of the next few years? That's a lot of upkeep and a lot of time that we just don't have. But I don't know, Ryan, where are you at on this?
Yeah, I'm curious to know where these are being developed as well. And likewise, this is a bit topical because last night we had the Gran Turismo 7 State of Play, which, by the way, that game looks awesome. I can't wait to play that. But I'm wondering, for example, if maybe they classify something like Gran Turismo 7 as a live service game, because it looks like there's going to be some microtransactions in that game. And I don't know if they're going to continue support for that, throughout the generation or what they're going to do with that. I also think that maybe they're factoring in a game like Last of Us Factions as maybe a live service game as well, which kind of makes sense when you think about, the way the progression happened in, the first Factions. So I would imagine that's probably the direction they're going with that. But yeah, beyond that, who is working on these games and what are they going to be? I think that's the bigger question here. And obviously, I hope the studios that are assigned to do these games, I hope that that's what they want to do. I hope they're not being forced into live service games. Like maybe Sony Bend, for example, maybe their next game, instead of just being a normal, normal single player narrative game, maybe they're doing a live service game. Like we heard Siphon Filter come up a couple times. Like maybe they're doing a live service Siphon Filter game or something like that. I'm just really curious to see what kind of games come out of it. But to your point, Matt, I think there's definitely some downside that can come along with it because of Avengers. Because I think Avengers would have been a totally fun game that people would have enjoyed if it wasn't a live service game, because all the elements of that campaign were excellent, except for the live service elements that got in the way of it and ruined the experience for me. So yeah, I feel like that's a cautionary tale, and hopefully Sony's learned from that after, being kind of in the partner in the Avengers marketing and whatnot, and kind of that whole fiasco. But yeah, I'm really interested just to know more about these games, and I'm sure we'll be hearing about them, next year, the year after, because I imagine most of these are still farther away. Like, I think the earliest we see one of these live service games, besides, of course, Last of Us Factions, is maybe 2024 or something like that. But
so I have a thought, Ryan, and I'm curious as to your thoughts about this as well, because I mean, like, especially with all these acquisition season stuff going on, Jim Ryan and Phil Spencer have both been like, we're not done. Do you think that in this 10 games, Jim Ryan could have almost been like, I'm sure there's a lot of deals going in place right now. Could part of these 10 games be from acquisitions that we don't know about yet, which is where maybe these teams, these developers and teams are coming from, or maybe they're games that we already know about, that might just end up being exclusive on PlayStation? Do you think that there's a possibility that, not that he slipped, because I don't think that, it's, whatever, but do you think that part of it could be coming from future acquisitions we just don't know about yet?
I personally don't think so, because with the way acquisitions work, especially if they haven't announced that they're making the acquisition yet, you never know. They could fall apart in the last, the 11th hour of the negotiations. So I don't think they would go on record with investors in an investment call if they weren't able to meet that, if like one of their acquisitions fell through or something like that. Obviously, taking Bungie out of the equation, like any future acquisitions, like for example, if they were to acquire a company like Sega or something like that, or Capcom, and they were factoring, Capcom's working on another Monster Hunter game, and that's a live service game for us, right? Like, I feel like they wouldn't say that on an investor call if they weren't like 100% sure that deal was going through anyways. Because at least in my experience with reading information from investors calls, they're usually they sometimes spin the truth, but for the most part they're usually very honest about stuff like this. So I don't think they'd factor into it, unless of course if a deal fell through, they would maybe play another game with another studio or something like that. Who knows? But yeah, I don't think so, but you never know. You never know. That's a possibility for sure. I mean, if anything, I feel like this tells the tale of, to your point about Jim Ryan hinting about future acquisitions, I think this hints at the idea of maybe their future acquisitions being studios that are known for live service games or have, pre-existing live service games. Cause it sounds like that's the direction Sony wants to go in now versus the focus being on the tentpole experiences that we've known them for, which also makes me a little bit sad because that's one of the things I like about playing, PlayStation first party studios games, right? Like having those tentpole single player games versus, the live service games. But I guess we'll see. Again, this is all like really far in the future. So who knows? But before we move on, I want to bring in Todd Oxtra at Talkstra, who asks the question, with PlayStation announcing a reduction of PS5 production, do you expect them to lean into custom plates or DualSense controllers or other accessories rather than doing custom PlayStation 5 systems? I mean, I think that was the plan the second they announced the faceplates, Todd, as far as, them leaning into that more anyways, rather than custom systems. But I think they'll do like custom system bundles eventually, but it might take them a little bit longer to do than Microsoft, where I feel like Microsoft is more comfortable doing that. But Matt, what do you think about this question?
I don't know, dude. PlayStation is so weird when it comes to special consoles, and even when like the controllers and the custom plates and their rollout of them, it's all so strange. I feel like for them, it's more of an afterthought than it is anything else. Like Microsoft seems to care a lot more about how you interact with their accessories and how like their customization options. PlayStation for me has always felt like oh yeah, maybe we should drop a new controller or a new plate sometime soon. So I don't really know if it's like, if they're going as far as like, oh no, we don't have as many PlayStation 5s coming out this year, let's maybe do some other stuff. I feel like they're kind of like, yeah, maybe we'll throw in a couple more this year. They just, for me, they seem so weird when it comes to this stuff. I don't think it's their focus at all.
Yeah, exactly. Like, especially because of the way we're even seeing with the nameplate, the faceplates roll out now, where like we can't even pre-order 3 of the 5 colors they announced. So it's just like, and we don't even know when that's going to happen. So at this point, yeah, I don't know how far they're going to lean into it, but I suspect that they're going to lean into it. I feel like they were going to lean into it more anyways, just by the fact that they're doing custom faceplates, rather than, having the limited edition consoles. I don't think that it has anything to do with the PlayStation 5 itself just being in low production. Even though after coming away from this earnings report, like, I don't know if we'll ever see a day in the next year and a half where you'll be able to walk into a store and buy a PS5. Like, I still think they're going to literally sell out the second they come up. And then the bots are going to still continue to stash them up. And that's just going to continue to be the reality we live in for the next, at least year or 2 years at this point, especially with them indicating this, like, there's only going to be 11 million, that they can produce this year. Cause obviously they say that there is 11 million sold, but they're selling every single one they produce. So yeah, I think it's going to be really hard just to get one at all, but I suspect we're going to get lots of faceplates this year. But I'm just, the who knows with the rollout of that and how that's actually going to play out. So, yeah.
Well, from our what's it called, predictions, I sure hope you're wrong.
Oh geez.
Oh geez.
I mean, at this point, I'm just super excited to pre-order either the pink or the purple faceplates. At this point, I just want them to let me to pre-order them. I want them to let me give them their money. So
right.
Yeah, there you go. And then last news story this week, Discord is rolling out an option to link your PSN account to Discord, allowing you to display what you've been playing as a status on the service. This has been rolled out to some people. It's actually been rolled out to me already. I actually linked my account and I can confirm it works. But I know it's not rolled out to everyone. It's just like a slow and gradual process. But eventually you'll get a notification on Discord saying, hey, by the way, did you know you can link your PSN account with Discord? And then when you get that, you're kind of ready to go with this. So Matt, you and I use Discord a lot. In fact, we're talking on Discord right now. So what do you think about this news? I mean, obviously we knew this kind of thing was coming because of the acquisition, but what do you think?
I think it's cool. I think it's a fine first step. Like, this is really more of like an aesthetic thing than anything else. And like, oh, now you can see what people are playing on Discord. Like, it's cute. It's fine. It rolled out to me as well yesterday. Even though the initial announcement said that they're only starting in the US, it seems that it is starting to roll out, out in other countries as well already. So yeah, I have it as well. I linked it up right away and I kind of forgot about it. I think it's cool. But Ryan, before we go into the carpool, do we want to talk about GT7 and the state of...
I'm glad you brought that up because I was literally just about to ask you about that too. So I didn't put it as a news story because ultimately I don't think we learned much in the way of news about it, but I think we could just talk about our overall thoughts. So Matt, start us off. What's your hype level after the state of play with Gran Turismo 7?
I got more hyped. This game continues to get more and more exciting for me. But for kind of weirder reasons, I thought that this, while I thought that some of the information that we learned was cool, this wasn't a state of play for a newcomer to GT7 like myself, just because I feel like there was a lot there that they focused on. Like the fact that they went on as long as it did about like, the science lesson that we got with clouds and how they're formed. I was kind of like, okay, cool. Like I didn't need 5 minutes of this. Split screen is awesome. I'm so stoked at the split screen. Lord knows how much I'm going to use it, but I'm so glad that it's there. Just because like, even for my brother is a massive racing game fan, and for us to be able to hop in together because he doesn't own a PlayStation and just play on my PS5 together makes me excited. I love how far they're going with a lot of this stuff. The museum and stuff looks really beautiful and really well put together, and I'm never going to touch it. I just personally don't care about that kind of history when it comes to automobiles, but I'm really glad that it's there for people who are interested in learning more about it. The game looks absolutely breathtaking. It looks beautiful. The weather effects look incredible. There's so much going on there. The music was fantastic. A lot of the music that was in that presentation was really, really cool. So I'm excited to kind of see the modified replays with the different music added and stuff. I think that's a really, really cool idea. So for me, it definitely made me more excited. I did think it was too long. And the one question that kind of it left me lingering with, which I'm just not sure, maybe I missed it because I was editing while I was watching, is like when they were going through all the menus of how you can customize the car and all the different parts. I really hope that there's a button that says just pick the best stuff for me, because there's no world that I'm actually going to be going through all that and actually learning about the different parts. So I really do hope that there's a button of just pick the best thing for me, because ultimately I want to get in, I want to race, I want to mess around in the world and, just actually race around these cars with these cars. But yeah, it raised my hype levels, but I do think it was too long, and maybe we could have gotten this what's it called? Ghostwire Tokyo combination GT7 thing. Maybe this should have been a normal state of play in my thoughts, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. What about you, Ryan? What did you think about it?
Yeah, I think what this state of play really tried to illustrate was all of the what they're doing with all the different modes, and kind of showing that this game and kind of proving to people that this is kind of like a return to the classic Gran Turismo style versus what we got with Sport. Because I think a lot of people kind of fell off the franchise with Sport because Sport tried to do all kinds of weird live servicey stuff that a lot of people just weren't really into. And they kind of like stripped out a lot of the old modes, especially some of the single player stuff from the previous Gran Turismo games. And I feel like that was one of the biggest things they wanted to get it across with this. Because while you were watching it, you probably noticed that they went into a bunch of modes, like the license modes, for example, like getting your different licenses for your different cars and unlocking different cars with the in-game currency as you go through it. Like that's always been a big part of Gran Turismo it's been that. And that's one of the things I actually really enjoy about the game. And it also just helps you become like a better like in-game driver as well, because it has you do a bunch of different tasks, and as you do those tasks, it'll then unlock different currencies for you and stuff like that. So I've always really enjoyed that part of the gameplay. So I think more than that, that's one of the things they really wanted to show off, which was again like the first 10 minutes of that was going through a lot of those different modes. And then after that, you got instead of like the history museum stuff. And yeah, I'm like you, I don't really care too much about cars personally. So I personally will never use that. But then I love the idea that they started talking about some of the returning raceways from previous games as well, including some of the ones from even the PlayStation 1 version of the game, like High Speed Ring and Deep Forest. And I as a longtime Gran Turismo fan from playing it on the PlayStation 1 and putting hundreds of hours into that game, like, yes, that got me actually pretty excited about that. And everyone, of course, knows that I'm not like a huge racing person, but I've always really had a soft spot for Gran Turismo, and especially like playing some of the older games. Like I still get nostalgic for those games in particular. So I'm actually really excited about this. As far as the cartooning, I think there will be a button to kind of like do like a simplified approach to some stuff. And then if you want to go into the nitty gritty with some of the tweaking, you can definitely do that as well. Cause again, that's always been a big part of the experience as well, as like custom fitting all your cars to all the different specs that you want to do. But I think there will be like a simplified button that you're kind of hoping for. I just didn't think they showed it, but yeah, who knows? Either way, I'm excited for the game now. I'm actually like I was like mildly optimistic for it. Because again, everyone knows how I feel about racing games, but after seeing this presentation, even though I feel like I agree with you, it went on way too long. I think I'm actually excited about this one. I might actually pick this one up day one. But
me too.
Yeah, we'll see. Either way, exciting stuff. Last question of the week to kind of round out the show comes to us from Court Lalonde at Court Lalonde over at Xbox A. And he asked the question, what do you think the tier system will be for Spartacus? So Matt, in your mind, if you had to, use your mind's eye to project, what do you think Spartacus is going to look like? What do you think the tier system for Spartacus looks like?
So in anticipation of Court's question, I dived into the supposed leaks, rumors, so on and so forth, just to see what people were saying as to what, we have no verification about any of this whatsoever, but, so take everything with a grain of salt. But basically what some of the rumors are saying is there's going to be a 3-tiered system. The first tier is basically the way that we know PlayStation Plus now. Nothing will kind of change there. The second tier will add in a large catalog of PS4 and eventually PS5 games, and it will be that third tier that adds in game streaming, the classic PS1, PS2, PS3, and PSP games, and then extended demos. I think that this both does make a lot of sense and doesn't. I think 3 tiers is too many. Honestly, I kind of don't think we need that middle tier whatsoever. I don't know how many people are going to kind of stop there and say, oh, okay, PS4 and then eventually PS5, if this is what it is. I kind of think just roll that tier 2 and tier 3 into one tier, have your base PlayStation Plus and have your PlayStation Plus Omega or whatever it is that they're going to be calling it as a kind of better service to let you dig into the classic collection if that's what you want. Just because, like, I don't know, to me, I would kind of raise the price of PlayStation Plus a bit, maybe even add the PS4 games into the base subscription. And then again, I think 3 tiers starts to get too many depending on how it kind of breaks out, especially because, I mean, like, I don't know. It just starts to get complicated, and then you're worrying about how much you're paying, and then upgrades start to become more complicated. And I think 3 is too many. But what about you, Ryan? What do you think? Where's Spartacus going? Yeah,
ultimately, like even if we didn't know that the rumors said that it'd be three-tiered system. I actually think it would have been a three-tiered system anyways, because if you look at it on Xbox, as far as Game Pass is structured, it's technically a three-tiered system. Yes, one of those tiers is the Xbox Live Gold. One of those tiers is just Game Pass without Gold, and then one of them is both of them combined. So I think that like ultimately if my initial guess would have just been the same thing, but for PlayStation, where they'd have just like Spartacus on its own, PlayStation Plus on its own, and then the two combined together to be one thing. And I think that's a system that makes the most sense because it's less confusing. Basically, it's like if you want to play it online and you want to have all the stuff, you just get the bundle. Otherwise, you buy whatever you want separately. Like I think that's kind of the way that they should do it. But ultimately, I expect it to probably be how, as the rumors have stated, which will kind of be annoying, where essentially you'll have, the backwards compatible stuff on its own tier. I don't know why they would do it that way. It's very silly. But it also brings in another idea too, and that's if they bring in the backwards compatible games as purchasable items. Because if the PS1 and PS2 games, for example, are, purchasable on their own, then I think it'll be less of a feel bad, because then if you don't want to, spend all the extra money to get the third tier, well, you just buy the games that you want then anyways at that point, right? So, and especially if they keep the prices the same as they are on PlayStation 3 for, PS1 classics, which I don't see them really going much higher than that for a lot of those games. Then at that point, yeah, like why not? Or what if some of my purchases carry over from PlayStation 3 if they do them in like a billable state? So yeah, I think there's a lot of unknowns here, which it just makes speculating about this stuff a little bit hard. But I feel like it'll probably end up being, to Court's question, I feel like it'll probably be the three-tiered system you kind of talked about, Matt, where it's, base tier, which is PlayStation Plus, and then PS4 games, PS5 games, and then backwards compatible games on top of that. But we'll see. Either way, we got to go. But before we go, Matt, plugs go.
Yeah, you can find me over on Twitter at burnout_Matt, or you can find us over at youtube.com/burnoutbrighter. Our mental health series is going. And we also have, like I said, we had a Pokemon review go up. And we have a bunch of others that are cool stuff coming, including a new Black History Month series for the month of February, focusing, we're teaming up with Level 1 Gaming to do another run of the Black History Month series. So please come hang out and check it out.
Very nice, my friend. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You can find us on Twitter at Yumi Caprice, on YouTube at youtube.com/Yumi Capri, and on podcast services around the globe. So for Matt Sawinski, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been episode 37 of the PlayStation Drive, and we're out. The PlayStation Drive is fueled by patrons over at patreon.com/Yumi Capri. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you to our over 70 patrons, starting with our Capremium producers, Dallas Ford, Jonathan Brown, the man behind the music on the Xbox Drive and the Nintendo Drive. You can check out his new album, In My Element, over on Apple Music, as well as his website, and Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team. Our platinum producers are Robbie Bobby Miller and Trucker Sloth, and our gold members, Argo, Brandon Myers, Dallas Robbins, Dano, Emily O'Kelly, Foolish Fuji, Joel Brooks, Jose Jimenez, Mac Time, Marcus O'Neill, Mr. and Mrs. Nasty Boots, RJ Kern, Skinny Matt, Tony Baker, and Xavier Reyes. Thank you all for all of your support, and if you're interested in joining the Patreon, head over to patreon.com/Yumi Capri and pick the tier that's right for you.